Hey, what's up guys? So welcome back to this video. Today we are going to try and make a hyper casual game for mobile, and hopefully we can also publish it by the end of this video. So you'll have a solid understanding of how to come up with a game idea, how to find assets for the game idea, how to build a prototype, how to build a game, and how to publish it. So depending on how long the video is, I might actually split it up into multiple videos, and if it's not that long, then you'll find everything in here. So yeah, so let's get started. So first thing first, I have opened Milanote. As you can see, it's very blank here. I have actually created an email address just for the game, so I already have a game idea that I want to use, but you can come up with your own. So for instance, my game, I wanted it to be a hyper casual game, something that I can easily make quite quickly and also just publish, and I can monetize it later on quite easily as well. And it had to be something fun, it has to be something very juicy, and it has to be something very easy to make. So then the return on investment is actually quite profitable. So the game idea that I went for is a small game where you have to destroy buildings in order to cut the power. So realistically speaking, you'll have a small map in your scene, then you'll have like a certain number of different buildings. You could have the electrical providers, you could have supermarkets, you could have houses, and so on. And then you have a time constraint, let's say 60 seconds, and then during these 60 seconds you have to try and damage the most amount of building, which would then cause a power outage for that particular building, or sometimes even the buildings around it. And then the more power that you actually cut, the more points you get, and then we can just monetize it later on using this. So that's a very simple idea. So now let's try and plan our work. Okay, so especially if you are a beginner, it's always a good idea to have somewhere that you can always refer to. This is so that you can prevent things called scope creep, which basically means you have an idea, but the ideas just keep flowing. So instead of finishing the game with one idea, one feature, you end up always working on it and keep on adding new features, and then you simply just can't finish the game in time. So here, that's Milanote. I'll leave a link to it down in the description down below. You can check it out if you don't know what it is. So basically what Milanote is a very simple planning software. As you can see, we have notes that we can put, we've got links that we can have, we got to-dos as well if you want that, and amongst other things. So it's very easy and very nice to use. So let's start with 3 columns. Okay, so 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, so these 3 columns, the first one will represent not started, and then we can add in progress. We can have these 4 testing, and then let's just add another column, and let's call this one finished, right? And let's assign a color to each one of them. Sorry, not this one. Let's just assign the top script. So this can be gray, this can be not this one, this can be this color, testing could technically be that color, and then finished can be green, a nice green. Okay, so now it just gives us a very nice visual cue as to what we have left and what needs to be done, what needs to be tested, and what has been finished. Okay, so now the next thing that we'll have to do is to drag and drop the arrows here. I just select that like so, and another one, Obviously you could make it any way you want. This is my preferred style of making that Milanote board, but if you have another idea or workflow that you use, feel free to use that. You can even find other softwares. I know some users, I forgot the name, I think it's Trello. Yeah, Trello. Some uses Trello, and that's also very nice. So you can feel free to use any one that you want, but I'll stick with Milanote. So now I'll just add a to-do list on every one of them, like so. And now here, let's come here and let's try and add all of the different features that we have. So for instance, one of the features that we have is make the home screen, right, or the main menu, and then we can indent it and break it further. We can have like a level selector. We can also have a leaderboard. We can also have a settings page. Alright, here we have localization, we have audio settings, we can have graphic settings if we need. We can also have account page, and then we can, yeah, I think that's it for now. We can have a shop, right, and here we can have different things as well. For instance, we can have a add section, in-game currency section, and then here we can have purchasable section. So I plan on dividing it into 3 categories for the store, so people can just go, if they want to purchase things, they just go there, and so on. And for the home screen, what do we have left? We have a leaderboard, level selector, settings page, a shop page, and I think that's it for the home page. Now we have the actual game page, and for this one, let me think at what we have. Yeah, so we have to make the actual city, so procedural city. Then we need to have the UI for the game UI. As for the UI, we want to find the electricity meter. We want to have the total buildings, upgrade slot, item slot, timer, and section winning page. Okay, so that's all for the UI, and then what we need is the audio, game audio, and yeah, I think that's about it. We can always add more things to that list once we actually start the game, but I think this should technically provide a good overview of what we have to do. And yeah, so now once this has been done, you can easily just tick one of them. You can also just move it around. That's the nice thing about Milanote. For now, let's just keep them here because we haven't started anything yet. Alright, and yeah, so now that we've got a solid idea of what our game should technically be like, okay, so let's go ahead and create our project inside of Unity. So let me open Unity Hub, and then we'll just do new project, And then here what we want is a universal 3D. So we are not using high definition render pipeline because this is exclusively for PC and console. Instead we are using the URP, which should technically provide better performance and visual fidelity for mobile games. Alright, so here let me add the name of my game, which is City Collapse, I believe. Let me just check that again. Grid Collapse, sorry. Grid Collapse. And here obviously you could use Unity version control if you wanted to. If you check that, then you can have the different information about that. But for our use case, this should technically be fine. And once this has been done, let's select the latest LTS that I have and let's do create project. So now that the project has been created, we can finally start setting up the project for the game. So the first thing that we want to actually consider is that the fact that this will be a mobile game. So as such, it's always a nice step to just switch this to simulator, and once this has been opened, we can then just select a random phone from the list here. This will allow us to create the actual UI based on the phone. So I've installed the remaining devices, and as you can see now, we've got plenty of smartphones to choose from. This is purely just so that you have a reference frame, just to see how your UI looks. So I like keeping mine at the Note 20 Ultra. Okay, so this represents a quite broad range of devices that people use on daily. So now that this has been done, we can actually start making the game and all that stuff. Alright, so first thing that we want to do is, we've got all of this, but first we need to still see whether or not the actual idea itself is good, and this is where a prototype comes in handy. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna create a new, okay, so here it is, scenes. Let me just rename this to prototype. Alright, so that will be our prototype scene. And what a prototype is, it's basically the most basic version of your game. So it should technically not be very beautiful, alright, but it still should be very, it should be effective at communicating the game idea to you as the game developer. So then you can just play test it and see whether or not the idea is actually fun or not. Alright, so let's start with, let's just make a basic UI real quick. So I'll just have a timer text. Let me install this and I'll come back. Alright, so now I've installed the dependencies. Let me just re-add the TextMesh Pro component. Here let's just call this timer. I have it on top there. Alright. Let me just resize it so that we can actually see the timer. I put it here and put it in bold and have it at, let's say, 124. This looks good, and then here we can just have 30. Alright, so this is very basic again, because this is supposed to be a prototype, remember. Alright, and now let's just create the actual small city. For now we'll just use cubes and try to get the camera perspective just right. Alright, so we know how it looks. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna come here, I'm gonna set anti-aliasing to TAA, and then I'm just gonna replace the background type with a solid color. Let's have it as like a dark one, okay, and then let's switch it to orthographic instead of perspective. So this allows us to get a very nice view of the city, as you will see in a bit. So let's just do a very simple ground cube. Let's reset its transform, and now here it is. We can scale it up. So let's just take it as 100 by 100. So this represents our city. And now what we need to do is actually make our camera see it. So I was thinking of having it somewhere like this, so your camera actually sees this whole thing. Okay, so I'm just going to come here and then just do Ctrl+Shift+F to put the camera there. And let me just drag this here and see just how much of a scene we are looking at. Alright, so not a lot. Alright, so not a lot. So what we can do to fix that is increase the size. Let's put it at 45. So this technically should allow us to see more of the scene. Okay, so we'll have it here, and then we're gonna have it here, like so, and this also here. And now this can be 75. Wow, here it is. So this looks like a nice point of view. One more thing, let me just resize this part. Okay, here it is. For now we are just resizing it based on the device that we have seen, because again this is a prototype. But obviously if you were to use a tablet, as you can see now, you get black bars. But don't worry about this, we'll fix this when we actually start making the game. So for now we've got that. Let's just have some basic materials. So I'll just create a prototype folder here, and then I just create materials folder here, and I just have a ground material. Alright, so for now let's just have a basic saddle green material like this. Now what we can do is we can just add some cubes to represent the houses. Alright, so some cubes to represent the houses. Yeah, sorry. And here is the cube. Let's just have a material just for this one. So let's just call this one house. Okay, so this would be a simple house. We can have it as red, for instance. We can have the electrical provider as well. The electrical provider. This can be blue. We can also have a mall, right? Just a mall. So we've got like 3 different kinds of buildings. Okay, and all of them would just be simple cubes that we can just use. So this one we can just call house. This one we can call mall, and then this one we can call electrical provider. Here you go. And now let's just make another prefab folder here, and we can just put these there. 1, 2, and then 3. Now we can just delete them from here. Actually, we could technically make them a little bit bigger. Let's make them around 4. Looks good. Alright, yeah, so 4 looks good. We can just apply them. The size, yeah, they do, it does look good. Here you go. And now we need to do the scripting. So first, let's create a new folder here called scripts. The reason why I have a separate prototype folder is because usually the code that we will write here is actually very primitive and very hard-coded sometimes, because the goal is not to make a flawless or bug-free experience, it's just to make it work. So sometimes, you know, writing good code might take more time. So what we do is just we write a code, even if it's spaghetti code, just to test the idea first, and we might not use this script again. So if it's in a prototype folder, we can just delete the prototype and then just start over again. So here, let's start with the, let's have like a building manager. Okay, and let's add add prototype at the end, so we know that this is for the prototype. So I'll see you guys once this is ready. Yeah, so now that this is ready, hopefully you can see the codes well. Yeah, you should be able to see it. So here we will not be using any of this, however we will be using a public float health, right? And then this we can default to 100, and then we can have a public int point. We can just have it as 1, and yeah, that's about it, I believe. And then let's just disable this. So public void take damage, we'll just destroy it if it becomes less than 0. And then one last thing is public delegate void this one on points given. We can just add float points. Let's have this as a float as well. And then here, before that, rig static on point given, here you go. And then before we destroy, we want to invoke this with our point. Here you go. So that's about it for the actual building manager. Now let's just go into the prefabs and add these here. So building manager. Now for the electrical one, this should technically have the most amount of health points and give you the most amount of points. House can be the default one, and then the mall can have let's say 250 and then give you like 2.5 right points. Now we also need another one, which would be the point counter, and this one let's have it below, right? Just for now, just for testing, let's just have it sit on at the bottom of our screen, right? So now that this has been done, we've got a timer display, we've got a point display, and we've got our building managers all done. We can actually go and create some more scripts. So first one is a game manager. Okay, let's just add prototype here again, I forgot. Let's open this up in Visual Studio, and right here let's just have a public void, call this on points given. This should technically accept the points, and here void awake. On void awake, what we want to do is building dot on points given. We subscribe to this event. Void on destroy. We just unsubscribe to the event, like so. And then let's just have a serialized field, or let's just have it as public for now. Public tmp underscore text, points text, and another one for the timer. Voila. And let's just have a very simple coroutine for the timer. Timer go. And here what we can do is public float session duration. For now let's just have it as 30 seconds. And here what we are gonna do is for int of I is equal to 0 up to session duration. So now timer display, here session duration minus I, then we just wait for 1 second. This we can start it on void start instead of awake. Start the routine, and here you go, like so. And now let's see. So let's just drag the game manager into the scene. Let's assign both the timer and the points counter. And if we hit play, then the timer should technically work. As you can see now, the timer is counting down, which is good. Now let's just do a delegate, another delegate. Public delegate void on session end, and then just do static on session end on session end, and then once this this ends, we can just invoke that. Here you go. And now here, yeah, now that is this. Now here we can make another script real quick. Yes, so we can create another script real quickly. This can be for the attack manager. So this allows us to actually modify the current damage points that we are dealing once we actually hit something. And here let's just have it as a public static instance, and then a public float damage, and then void awake instance equals to this, like so. Let's also have this in the scene and save that. Yeah. So now the last thing that we have to do is to actually allow us to actually click on the game objects. So this we can actually handle in the building manager prototype itself. So here what we technically could do is let's just have a public void on mouse up. Alright, so on mouse up, then we can just do take damage. Okay, here you go. And now if we were to just place some prefabs around on the actual ground, we hopefully should be able to click on the different cubes. Right, so we've got 3 cubes. So let's try out. So if I click on this one, okay, wait, what? Yeah, we also need a rigid body on each of them. So here we can have it is kinematic. We don't really need to use gravity. Oh, okay, wait. Alright, so I think let me just switch the package for the input system. Wait, where is it? So player. I'll be right back. Alright, so what we are going to do is, instead of using on mouse up, for some reason this is not working, we can simply just use I pointer up handler. First we need to implement the event systems, and then down handler as well, and then let's just implement all the interfaces. So we can do that here. And just for the on pointer up we do this, and for this one we simply do nothing, like so, and hopefully now it should work just fine. Yeah, so now that this has compiled, we can press run, and then hopefully this should work. So now we've got the timer that's running, we've got our 3 houses, and just for the sake of making them disappear faster, we can just increase this to 100, and as you can see it is being clicked and we are taking damage. As you can see, they just disappear, and our points oh, okay, so our points should technically update, but for some reason it's not. Let's counter. Alright, so at the very least we know that the timer and the building is definitely working. Let's just see whether or not we forgot to 1 points given. Oh yeah, we forgot to actually display it. So point text dot text, here we can just have this set here. And now that this has been fixed, this is set to 10 attack manager. Let's set it to 100. So let's scale this small. We got 5 points, we got 1 point, and then we got 2.5 points. Now the only things left is for us to have a float current points, which equals to 0, and then each time we have to plus equals to points, and then instead of printing points we print current points. So now this should work and they should update our points accordingly. So now that we've got a basic understanding of how our game will run, what we can do is either just take it straight to development, or we can just iterate on the prototype and make sure that we are 100% sure that this would make for an interesting gameplay. But for our case, because I'm making a video on how to actually build a hyper-casual game, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna assume that this is a good gameplay loop. Alright, I'll just assume that this is a fun and rewarding loop. So we'll just take this and then just convert it to a fully working game. If you are actually making a game yourself and you've reached this step, what I would suggest you doing is to actually iterate on the prototype a little bit more, maybe have the buildings actually get spawned at random, and then just try and play it to really test and see whether or not your game idea is working. But again, for the sake of this video, we'll just assume that the prototyping has been done, so we can now just move on to the actual production. Alright, so what we want to do is go to scenes. We can just duplicate this and call this the game scene, and here we can just get rid of these. We can just get rid of that as well. We'll keep the ground for now, and as for the canvas, we can just delete these, and we can keep the prototype folder because we are not going to use it. So now what we need to do is we can actually go on the Unity Asset Store and see what assets we can use for this game. Alright, so I'll just gather some assets and I'll be back. So here we are in the Unity Asset Store, and let's actually go find some assets so that we can actually use them. So let's go and find some 3D models, 3D assets for it. And what we want is some environment for now, because we don't really have characters. Obviously we could add them later on, but this is optional. And now we need to decide on art style. So because this is actually a mobile game, alright, we are not going to use a hyper realistic assets like this one, for instance. It looks gorgeous, yes, but that's more for a PC setting or a console setting rather than the type of game that I'm making, which is a hyper casual game for mobile. So what we can do is we can just search here. Even in the environments, we can really go in depth. Alright, so let's say we want to find some road base. We might want to have roads. We want urban, and for now that's all here. And now that this has been sorted, let me just have 96. Okay, so let's just go around and find some nice ones. So perhaps what I'm thinking is something more like low poly style, right? Low poly style, a very simplistic art style that makes it look quite good. I think this could work. Okay, I'm just going to open it in another tab. I'll also leave the links to the assets in the description down below, so you can check them out if you want. As you can see, I have actually bought some assets previously, but feel free to use any assets that you wish. Alright, so let's find some more. Modular house, no, that's not quite the look I'm looking for. Okay, so I'll just browse through this and I'll come back with the selections that I've made. Alright, so I've got actually two assets, one of which I bought. It's for $70. It's definitely pricey, but do keep an eye on it because this price will be on discount. Just watch for it. Okay, just make sure to keep an eye on it. And so as you can see here, this definitely is the style I'm going for. It's very simplistic and it's still very high quality. And now if you don't want to spend money on assets, then I also have this one. This also looks quite good. It's definitely very simplistic art style, and the assets actually looks quite appealing and good. You could definitely use that, or as you can see, we are actually going to use alright, so we are going to use this one instead today, but this one as well is actually quite good. It does definitely seem like high quality enough for a free asset, and it's also modular, so you could technically mix and match if you want. You even have these terrains. Oh wait, actually Let's see what we have here. Okay, so we do have our terrains as well. Alright, okay, good. Alright, so I'll definitely leave the link for this one as well in the description down below. Feel free to check it out, and if you also want this one, the link is again in the description down below. So I'm just going to open this in Unity and import the asset. So now that it has been imported, we can actually go ahead and look at how it is. So we've got two packages, convert to built-in. Okay, so we can actually delete these two, because this is if we want to convert it to another render pipelines, but we are using the URP, so that's fine. Let's just open one of the scenes and see how everything looks. So as you can see now, we've actually gotten quite a lot of assets to work with. So we even have like the water with a cool texture. We've got the sand, we've got hospitals, we've got skyscrapers apparently. We also got a nuclear reactor, that's nice, and a factory, a stadium, boats, even a port, that's nice, a gas station, and I think I saw an airport, yes, some airplanes, a car service, and an airport, yeah, an airport. What about, what's that? A parking lot, construction site, sorry. Okay, yeah, so we do have a lot of things to work with to fully make our game. Great, so let's just revert back to the previous scene. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come here into prefabs. The first thing that I want to do is I'm gonna replace this ground with the actual a new floor, that is. So let's find one that works well. I'm thinking of perhaps having it like this, so like a floor tile, so a slab, and then we can add the crosses later on maybe. Okay, so I'm just gonna use this instead, and hopefully I can actually expand. Okay, no, it does not work like this. All right, so let me just switch into orthographic. There you go, into isometrics at least. And let me just place them here. So I'm just gonna duplicate this and I'll be right back with you. Alright, so now I've got the ground made up. As you probably have seen, I did make it a little bit larger. So this way, even if I were to change like the sizes of the devices, I can still actually see the whole map instead of like a void or something. Alright, so now that this has been done, we can save this and move on to the next thing. So now what we can do is we can find barriers or things like that, or we can add this later on. Let's just find something else. Oh, we've got props, that's nice. Oh, here is barriers. So what I'm gonna do is let me find some buildings. Alright, so now what we can do is we have to decide on how we'll actually make the different levels. So one way of doing it would be to manually place all the buildings so we get a lot of levels this way. Or another way, which is actually easier, is to have them procedurally generated. And then how we can actually vary our difficulty is, let's say for the easier levels, we can have like smaller buildings, okay, the ones that actually get destroyed really easily, while for the harder ones we can introduce slowly more complex, more difficult to destroy buildings. And yeah, we can actually do that. So yeah, I think we'll take it this way. So the first thing that I want to do is I'm just going to select all of these prefabs. I'm going to add the building manager prototype. Actually, let's wait, because we'll have to rewrite it. Yeah, so let's start with the spawning of the different buildings. So let's just create a new folder called scripts, and here let's just have this for the buildings, and let's just have a building spawn. Here you go. Open that up in Visual Studio. So now, before we actually go and write anything here, let me explain to you how we are going to actually spawn different things. So what I was thinking was, let's say this is one map template. Alright, so this is one map template, and then in that we can have like slots, and then each slot can be one building based on a profile that we set. And for each map template we can already define the roads as well as where each building can spawn, and it then just, you know, every time you actually play it, it just randomly selects buildings and places them everywhere. So that seems to be quite good. So let's try and see if we can do that. So first what we want to do is we'll just make it for the smartphone first. So all the buildings will actually appear here inside the smartphone view, and then later on we can expand it to accommodate for the iPads as well. So let's switch back to here, and then let's just get a guide of where exactly it ends. So let's take this here, reset this completely, and I just pull this off right here. So this is the cube, and now we can just move it above like so. Yes, and let's just dock it here so we can actually see everything. All right, so this goes here, and then this goes here, and then this actually goes up to here, and this one up to here. Okay, so this is our guide, so we'll try and respect this, so we will not place anything outside of that. Here let's just do one folder called gizmos. So I'll just create a script just so that I can see the outline while editing. So let's call this object gizmo. So this will not be present for the players, this is only inside of the editor. So here we can just do void on draw gizmo, and then we can have a public color, gizmo color. Here, and we can do gizmo.color equals to this, and then here we can just do gizmo dot draw wire cube, and then we can just call these. Here it is. And now that this has been done, we can drag and drop this into cube, and we can just call this our guide. Save that. Now if we were to give this a color, let's say blue, as you can see, even if we don't select it, we can see the gizmo. Neat. And this is actually completely invisible to the player, so the player will not be able to see that. Alright, so now that we've got ourselves a guide, what we can do is first let's create a map template. Okay, so this is our ground. We'll keep this intact, and then we'll layer all the maps on top of it. So let's just call this template 1, and let's just put this here. Now what we can do is let's go back to this folder, and right here, as you can see, we've got different roads and stuff. We even also got parks that we can have. So let's start by adding some roads. Let me just choose one that's going to fit. This one. Let's make a very simple one for now. Okay, let's just use this one instead. And let's go right there. Here. So now we can actually see this, which is perfect. And let's make sure that this actually sits on top, like so. Yeah. So this sits on top. And then we can just, let's just have this go here, like so. And here. So now we've got our road. We can just create a prefab, create an empty game object for the parent. Call this the main road, and drag this into the template, and then let's just have this in the middle, like this. Okay, so now we get the road right in the middle. Okay, here. And now what we can do is we can assign slots. Alright, so this one we can just duplicate guide itself, like this. But obviously we want to just reset the transform, the scale rather, here. And now let's just add another color so we can identify it. So first we want, let's find a suitable size. This size should technically work well, 5, like this. And now what we can do is very simply we can just place them around, like so. We can place them around. We can also space them so that they don't look too cramped. Alright, like this. Here we can have another road. I just forget about this one. We'll add some roads and branches. And let's find one. Okay, let's just use this one instead. So this one, and then this one, we can then just rotate it 90 degrees on this y-axis, like so, and place it here. Let me just increase. The issue is that there is this. Okay, never mind, we can just continue placing it this way. It should not cause much issues, hopefully. Like this. We can always fix this later on, definitely. So this is definitely not something that is set in stone. Here you go. Now we can just call this branch. Call this a branch. And then we can just add some more branches here and there. We want a branch here. Let's say we want a branch here. We might also want one over there. Maybe another one here. And maybe another one over here somewhere. This looks quite good, I guess. Let's just drag this to the template, and we can drag this into the main road as well. So I'll just fill everything with the the slots rather, and then I'll be back with you. Great, so now I've actually finished setting up the grids and slots. So now we can actually use this and then just set up our script to use these slots, and then later on we can add more templates if we want. Alright, so now let's just go back into Visual Studio, and then into the building spawner. What we want is a public list of transforms. Let's call this slots available. Alright, and now we can have a void start. And then we can just return here itself. And here we can have void spawn. And right here we can have a public list of game object building prefabs. And then let's not forget, we also want to keep track of everything we spawned. Here we can just call spawn. And then right here, what we want to do is we want to first check whether or not buildings is null. If this is null, we can just initialize it. And now what we want is to destroy every buildings that we have. Alright, so we just call destroy t. And then we can just do buildings.clear, like so. Now, once that this has been done, what we want to do is we loop through each, and then we just decide which buildings to get. Let's just do for each in slots available, and let's just add a public float. Call this building spawn rate, spawn chance, and let's just do it a 50% chance of spawning. Let's just do a range of 0 to 1. There you go. Oh no, not this one, sorry. This one. And then here what we can do is a very simple mechanic. So if random dot range. And this one, what we can do is very simple. 0 float to 1 float is less than or equals to building spawn chance. Sorry, if it's greater than building spawn chance, we can just continue. Why that? Because if let's say we say it's 0.75, then if this gets to 0.5, it's definitely within the range, so we can definitely spawn. But if it's above that, then we just discard it. Now here we just grab a random index, so we got random index. Alright, and then here we assign the building equals to, we just instantiate one like this, item.position, and then quaternion.identity, and then let's not forget we also want to add it to buildings.add building. Here you go. And yeah, so that's everything. Now let's just test it out and see how it works. So for this one, we want to have one manager script, so we can just place all of the scripts inside of it. So here we can just call this building spawn manager. So this just keeps it very neat. So now we know that under this game object, everything related to managers will be here. We can even further classify them by using a nested hierarchy. So here we have the managers, and here we have everything related to buildings. Alright, so building spawn manager, here it is. So now what we can do is let's add a context menu, spawn buildings. Let's make this public, and here, so this allows us to automate this process. Here we can just do a simple game object that find all objects of type oh, actually no, we can't do that, never mind. Or we can add this later on. Let's just select all of this. So we've got 75 slots, and then we need the building prefabs. This we can have here. Let's just select all of this and place them here. And now let's just hit play and see how it works. So as you can see, everything was, well, has been spawned. However, yeah, we forgot to do something. Wait. We have something called the scaling issues. So if I were to just drag and drop one of these buildings inside of one of these slots here, as you can see, it's actually quite big. So what we want to do is scale down those buildings so that it actually fits within the space provided. So it's still a little bit too big. We can have it as 0.25, maybe to 3, to 2, to 1. Okay, 175 looks good. Alright, so 0.0175 looks good. Let's just apply all of this here. Oops, not this one. here you go. Now it's going to apply it to all of this, and let me just remove all of that, instead passing item, and then here we can just do building.transform.position equals to vector3.0. We also, here you go, transform.local position, so here you go. Now if we hit run again, everything should look fitting. Simulator, click run. As you can see now, the scales is definitely better, but some buildings are actually too small now, while others are good. Yeah, some buildings are just too small. Alright, so that's not an issue, but let's just see if this works. So we can go back to building spawn manager, and here we can just do spawn buildings. As you can see now, the layout keeps on changing, and if I were to decrease the chance of spawning, as you can see we get less and less buildings that spawns. If I put it as 100%, then every single one of them will be will have a building. So now we can also play with this probability slider for the difficulty. So maybe one with easier settings will have less buildings, one with a higher settings or more difficult one will have way more buildings, like this. So now we can just keep on doing this, and as you can see, everything just changes. Now the next step is for us to actually increase the size of each buildings. Alright, so that would be the next step. So I've noticed that the video is actually quite long. It's already 1 hour. So what we are going to do is we are going to end this video today here, and then we'll just continue on it in the next one. So yeah, so if you guys found this video helpful, please be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you have not already, and also comment down below if you've got anything else that you want me to cover, or any videos that you want me to make next. And on this note, I'll see you guys next one. Bye!